What's up, Buttercups? Welcome to the show. You'll notice I changed up the music a little bit. I decided to go a little emo. I don't know. I was getting sick of the other music. You know, it's 2025. Maybe go a little bit more. I don't know, new wave, new age. Anyway, welcome. I'm still here, Brian McWilliams, your beautiful bald host, and of course, we are going to get into some of the topics du jour today. But I do want to remind you guys, if you like what you're hearing, please hit subscribe to the podcast, to the channel. And also, we've got our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. We're going to be recording a Secrets, Lies, and Cover-Ups talking about Fidel Castro's illegitimate son, allegedly, one Justin Trudeau. We're going to be recording that tomorrow night. So you get in, you can listen to all that and more. So appreciate it if you did check it out. All right, let's get into it. So today, got to talk about the J.D. Vance speech over in Europe, in Munich, which was highly entertaining. I got to say, highly entertaining. I've got some thoughts on that. I know it's a little bit old news, such is life when you have a weekly podcast, but I want to talk about that and then talk about this 60 Minutes piece that came out. And I think it is coincidental. I don't think it's intentional that they released this right after J.D. Vance goes and eviscerates the entire European Union for their embracing of censorship. And of course, in Germany, which is now the new heart of censorship and totalitarian approach towards free speech. I think it's just one of those things that just kind of happened. And, you know, maybe it's a perfect world because the two dance hand in hand, right? They're doing the waltz. They're doing the German shimmy straight towards Nazism here, where 60 Minutes does an entire, as I said in the title of this episode, handy J, essentially to the German approach to censorship. This follows the J.D. Vance speech. Let's talk about that, where he goes over there and lays out that the greatest threat to democracy, and in fact, I would say the greatest threat to Western democracy and an embracing of Western values, aka what gave rise to Europe, what has given rise to art, to literature, to democracy or a republic. These are all based in the embracing of liberal, or what used to be liberal values, aka the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to exercise ideas in open discourse without fear of retribution by your government. Of course, we got here through a lot of trial and tribulation. Let's not forget that when the church ran things, people were burned at the stake for suggesting that the earth revolved around the sun and not vice versa. Let's not forget that during the slave eras, you would be, strung up for suggesting that the slaves should be freed. And of course, having an open and free discourse allowed us to get past that because you can now make a based argument for why you should not have slavery. The importance of free speech to maintaining the basics of our way of life seem to have gone misunderstood, not only by what now makes up a large component of the left, which we're going to talk about, but also what seems to make up a massive swath of both Europeans and Australians and New Zealanders and you name it, you got it, as far as these countries that previously embraced Western philosophy when it comes to free speech. So J.D. Vance goes over there, and I got to say, the balls on the guy. You know, I know people may not like him on the left. The balls of the guy to go over there and bend over the entire EU and put them to task, just giving them a nice red bottom spanking. Holy shit, it was amazing to see. And he's right in every possible way. I mean, the German minister, and I can't remember if it was the minister of the state or whatever it might be, literally this guy is out there crying. A grown man is weeping on camera, recounting just how mean J.D. Vance was in telling the Germans exactly how it was and telling Europe as a whole. Because let's not forget that UK went down this path of policing memes, of kicking people's doors in, of arresting people for saying mean things or questioning public policy, immigration policy, right? These are vital aspects of keeping a culture, maintaining a culture, having a happy balance between taking people in, having new blood, having, welcome open arms to people that are going to help your society, that want to be part of your society. And what we've seen with mass immigration, which is not what people are voting for, not what people understand as a standard immigration policy. And we've seen the results of that. You've seen it play out. I mean, God, I was just, we're getting back to Germany here. I just saw a video online, I think Elon Musk had shared it, of a young German lady, probably 25, literally crying because she's like, I might have to vote for the quote unquote German far right party, the AfD, because the immigration policies in Germany have made it unsafe for her to go on the train, to go into town. Like, people are terrified because of the violence that's enacted, because of people, rape gangs that exist here. Like, look at Sweden. There's another great example. You have to have the ability to question your government's actions. And when you say that something like immigration policy is hate speech, to speak out against it, and you have in the UK, in Germany, people kicking your door in, arresting you, and sending you to jail time that's longer than that those that are actually convicted of rape, you've got a fucking major problem on your hands. So JD Vance telling these people that, look, you are the threat to democracy. Your own internal mechanisms for control here are the greatest threat to democracy that exists, the greatest threat to the Western world and Western philosophy. I mean, these people, to act astounded, to act insulted, tells you everything you need to know. Because it's not as though they don't know this. It's not as though JD Vance is delivering a sermon here that these people aren't aware of. I mean, does anybody really think that the people that are in power there, these, for the most part, unelected members in the EU, in members of parliament that are being enacted to run these censorship campaigns and policing, do you really think that those people don't know what their goal is, what they're trying to do by attacking the basics of free speech, by attacking your ability to question the government? Of course they do. Of course they do. What's interesting is the tactics that they're going about this as, because you think about this 60 Minutes piece, right? Now, let me play a quick clip here, a quick clip from 60 Minutes so you can get what I'm talking about. This is about a minute long. I'm sure many of you have already seen this, but just in case those of you watching or listening have not been exposed to this yet, I will play this 60 Minutes hand job for German censorship. So let me share this real quick and then we'll get back to it. This is posted from End Wokeness, which is, of course, entertaining account. Okay.
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher if you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you in the internet, if I insult you or a politician,
That sticks around forever.
yeah.
The prosecutors explain German law also prohibits the spread of malicious gossip, violent threats, and fake quotes.
If somebody posts something that's not true, and then somebody else reposts it or likes it, are they committing a crime?
Yeah, in the case of reposting, it is a crime as well, because the reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or just reposted it. That's the same for us.
The punishment for breaking hate speech laws can include jail time for repeat offenders.
Is it a crime?
Okay. So there you have it. That's the clip. Sorry, my computer's going a little slow here getting back in here. All right. So that's the clip. Now, think about what you just saw there, right? So we saw a grinning journalist. In case you didn't watch the video that I just played, you have a grinning journalist from CBS's flagship news program, 60 Minutes, formerly respected. Now, CBS has been very outward in being, hugely anti-Trump. CBS had gotten in some trouble for also, God, there was somebody, like a high-level producer at CBS that was very high up, also had her files literally stolen, her computer taken away because CBS had gone after her because she wanted to, I believe it was pushed back against the Hunter Biden issue and that whole cover up about where Hunter Biden's laptop came from. Was it Russian disinformation? Oh, well. So CBS is on the forefront of really kowtowing to the government machine and the censorship machine. But you're watching this journalist smile as these assholes tell her that, well, the fine could be very heavy for internet because on the internet it stays forever. She's literally smiling in their faces. Oh, okay, yeah, great. That makes perfect sense. Oh, because it's forever. Okay. Number one, these Germans are like, oh, okay, well, a fine can be heavier because you interact with somebody in person, you insult them, and that's it. You walk away. Okay, number one, that's not true. You can get reported for a hate crime just for insulting somebody on the street in Germany the same way you can for posting online. So that's horseshit. But number two, to say that, okay, well, it's online. It stays there forever. That's why the fines are so heavy. Oh, they're so furious. Okay. On the internet, you have to find something. You have to try very hard to find something that's posted on social media, a meme, before it's immediately buried. Immediately buried. Number two, if you're saying that posting a quote unquote lie, a quote unquote a false quotation, or God, they named something else, a third thing, so much of what they just talked about falls under satire, right? Because a quote unquote lie might just be satirizing something that is the truth and making it look foolish, making it look obvious. Same thing with misquoting. I falsely attribute quotes to people often on Twitter, making fun of them in a satirical fashion, posting something that might have, from Justin Trudeau, posting something from even, a Donald Trump. I've posted, fake Donald Trump quotes, making fun of some of his policies before. Now, in Germany, I would be arrested for this, for making a joke, for posting satire. Now, the question is, why? And by the way, in the 60 Minutes piece, they later show, in glowing fashion, the Polizei literally going to people's houses, knocking on the door, arresting them, and confiscating their electronics. And then they joke about what a punishment it is to lose your phone, because losing your phone, your entire life is on the phone. Actually, that sounded French. That was a terrible accent. Your entire life is on the phone. So they take their phones and they're laughing about it because, what a hilarious joke we played by ruining these people's lives, by fining them God knows how many euros, taking their digital assets away good luck getting them back. Good luck getting them back. Years, just buy new ones. You're gone. And then they get to comb through it. And I'm sure in Germany, they've got laws to make sure that they have access and backdoor ways to get into all of your electronics and phones. And if you have password protection on it, I'm sure that they're going to sue you over that. But why do these people care so much about fucking memes? Same thing in the UK. Memes. Mean words. Well, I'll tell you why. And this is where it's interesting, because the failure of people that hated Donald Trump, their failure was in that they simply hated him. They couldn't find a way to make fun of him effectively. And making fun of somebody, making them into a buffoon, makes them irrelevant, makes them below the level of a threat, below the level of something that should be respected or listened to. That's what these German fucks and the rest of the European Union are terrified of. That's what the people in our country that run shit, that were trying to do the same thing here under the Biden administration and the censorship complex, that's what they were trying to achieve. Because once you do not take a government institution seriously, once you can see them for the buffoons and assholes and self-interested clowns that they are, you do not respect them. You will not vote for them. You will not believe the lies that they tell you. And these people know that. They know that the meme culture that exists right now is far more dangerous to them than anything written in a newspaper or an alternative source of currency. The memes is what's going to delegitimize them faster, more effectively, and make them look foolish. So thus, they've got to go after anything that's a lie in a meme, that's a joke in a meme. Oh, we've got to be anything that's mean. Who dictates what's mean? The people that are the butt of the joke, I'm sure, don't appreciate jokes. Thus, it's a hate crime. Thus, it's terrible. Thus, you have to take it down. That's offensive. Right? And they use this language. Somebody could be offended. That's why you're not allowed to do it. It's offensive to somebody, to a group of people, to an idea. Okay, you're presuming. They don't even have anybody that's reporting these things distinctly. It's a group of people. It's the classic left bullshit of getting offended on behalf of somebody else in the interest of expanding your own power, your own control. And that is what is happening here. Donald Trump was not able to be defeated by these people because they were unable to make him into a buffoon. Frankly, Donald Trump's hard to make into a buffoon because he himself comes across in so many times, in so many ways, as a buffoon intentionally. His actions, he doesn't mind being a little goofy. He doesn't mind, in truth, lampooning himself often. He doesn't mind saying outlandish things because at the end of the day, he's going to stick by them. He's going to say things that people are going to gravitate towards, and they like the message at the core of it, and they like what they perceive as authenticity from the man. The left couldn't lampoon it. If you watch any comedy coming out, and this comes back to Saturday Night Live and what a joke that show is. If you watched anybody doing comedy that was on the left, trying to make a good Trump joke, they all fell flat. That's why all these late night shows became unwatchable. You know, every comedian that did a stand-up bit on Trump, you could see the punchline coming because it wasn't funny. It wasn't original. It wasn't interesting. Nobody bought it. Trump already, he took that out of their hands. These people that are trying to run this censorship complex, they don't have an answer for looking legitimate. They don't have an answer for looking like the buffoons and liars and charlatans they are, because I'm sorry, at the end of the day, we all are watching how the world is unfolded. You're watching the immigration issues, the refugee crisis in Europe. You're watching the debt crisis in Europe. You're watching the fact that these people are going out of their way to destroy their own economies, specifically speaking of Germany, destroy their own economies, make the cost of living exponentially more expensive for everybody with their energy policies that they're only making worse. And then they're going to tell you that it's illegal to try to come back at them. The writing on the wall is very clear. Now, the question is, what are these Germans going to do about it? Do they have the guts to stand up? Do they have the guts to fight back? Will they? Or are they so conditioned now in the German police state towards accepting authority? And maybe this is always something that was in the Germans from the get-go. And I apologize, you know, any of our German listeners out there, you can feel free to correct me. But I mean, there's a reason, I suppose, that Germany became Nazi Germany to begin with. And that starts with they developed, number one, the Austrian method, right? Not the Austrian method, I'm blanking on the name of the school method that we have adopted here in the United States as well, by the way, which was they created public schools in order to indoctrinate children to obey the state. That was plain and simple the reason it existed. They created it. There's a reason that the Germans clearly went along with Nazism, that they became this massive military power, that they continuously followed bad leadership, bad advice, don't seem to have a lot of resistance inside the country to stand up to the state once power is stated, once power is demonstrated. Have they learned nothing? And I'm not sure if it was CNN, pardon me, or 60 Minutes, a different imbecile had suggested to Marco Rubio, and he smashed her on this answer, but suggested to Marco Rubio that free speech was the reason the Holocaust happened, which is one of the more retarded, psychotic things I've ever heard in my entire life, when the Nazi Party had a history of actually crushing free speech and dissent, not embracing it. It's not why the rise of Nazism came from that. A ridiculous statement. But certainly interesting that now the Germans are at an impasse where they're going down the same path of censorship, of authoritarianism, of top-down state control in order to create a sense of fear, right? Because let's not forget that aspect as well. This is designed to create fear in the population that anything you do, anything you say might get you arrested. And it's ambiguously vague for that reason. Just like under Barack Obama, one of the shittiest presidents in history, when he very vaguely had this clause put in called enemy combatants, right? This is during the war on terror. Well, enemy combatants was put in there as a legitimate reason. You know, people, any enemy combatant was considered to be an enemy of the United States and didn't have to go through habeas corpus. Well, there's a reason. Yes, the Prussians. Thank you, dear Commissar. The Prussian system of education. So Barack Obama intentionally has this vague phrase in there, enemy combatant, because enemy combatant can really mean almost anything. Are you an intellectual enemy combatant? Are you a physical enemy combatant? Are you strategically an enemy combatant? Who knows? Who's to say? Well, the same thing with all of these very vague, very broad laws concerning freedom of speech and censorship when it comes to the Germans, when it comes to the EU, when it comes to Australia, when it comes to the UK. I mean, the Irish were smart enough to slap this down. Good on you, Irish. You can't, doesn't matter how drunk you are, you can't get it past us. And I say that as a good drunk Irishman. But watching these people push this through and then back it up and then 60 Minutes cheerlead this. 60 Minutes, one of the most famous news programs in our American zeitgeist of a culture here, cheerleading it, following them around, entire segment documenting what a amazing, okay, all of this makes perfect sense. Don't you see why we have to have it? Oh, it's necessary because lies are out there. People's feelings might get hurt to protect democracy. And that's what these people count as, protecting democracy. I've seen that phrase used just recently. I believe it was a Norwegian woman who, by the way, I mean, look, not to body shame somebody for having a clear psychosis, and this woman has a problem. She is a rail thin woman who has a severe eating disorder, looks like a skeleton, a terrifying skeleton, but she's out there saying that social media and X has to be censored and controlled because it's a threat to democracy. And you're like, lady, look at yourself. You don't have control of your own mind nor your own body, and yet you want to exhibit control over what other people think and post and read. What have you been reading? You look like you're dying, and you're out here telling me what should be able to post on X, what should be shared, what people should be able to read. If it was up to you, everyone would be a skeleton in your country. CBS is an embarrassment. I mean, I can't think of anything more delegitimizing than what they just did as far as a brand. I think that the 60 Minutes brand is going to be tarnished probably forever. I don't know how, and I'm saying this as a public relations professional here. I don't know how you come back from this, considering, and again, no ability to read the writing on the wall, that Americans have at large rejected censorship. We don't want it. We want freedom of speech. We want this government intrusion into our lives, this threat taken away. It is proven to be vastly unpopular. It's one of the reasons Donald Trump won. Freedom of speech is still very popular among the broader swath of people. And yes, there's some crazy lunatics that the academic universities have brainwashed, but even those people are coming around strong. You know, you had more young people voting Republican, I think, than ever in the past. Well, not ever in the past, but at least for the past 40 years. And there's a reason for that. And CBS just, who the fuck greenlit this? How can anyone take them seriously ever again? As a news organization, if you are a news organization, I'm supposed to trust to bring me news and opinion that is based in reality, and you do a glowing review of Germans arresting people, taking their goods and putting them in prison for memes. Where do we fucking go from here? Close it up. Lock the doors, turn out the lights. We're done here. I mean, it's fucking unbelievable. All right, moving on. So I want to talk about the Fort Knox live stream that's been proposed. Speaking of turning out the lights, lock the doors. Because I don't think we're going to have much need for Fort Knox if we actually get to audit it. Now, Rand Paul has made a lot of efforts to audit Fort Knox that have been rejected. And this is hilarious to me. Why can't we know what's in Fort Knox? Why is there, like, the sheer fact that there is a rejection of an audit by our own government into how much gold is in Fort Knox tells you everything you need to know about how much gold's in Fort Knox. Now, there's been reports. Actually, there was an interesting report that came out, and I think it was a smaller Washington, D.C. paper. And this is back in, I think, 1975. Don't quote me verbatim on this, but there was a story they published in 1975 that had reported that one of the major families, it might have been the Rockefellers, had sold off the gold in Fort Knox. Like, they did this, without government purview, or maybe in conjunction with a couple of high-level people in government, split the profits, but that gold had been sold, was gone. The woman that wrote the article, and this is written anonymously, then was thrown or fell out of a 10-story window, a week after this article published. So coincidences abound, as they often do in these situations. But I'm pretty damn sure that there's no gold, or a very small amount of gold, in Fort Knox. Now, what's purported to be there, I think, is something like $486 billion worth of gold bullion. Elon Musk has suggested, and of course, I back this completely. Ron Paul, the Libertarian Party, we back this completely. Elon Musk has suggested that they do a live stream audit of Fort Knox. Now, I can tell you reasons why this won't happen. Number one, they'll say for security reasons they can't show a live stream of Fort Knox because, oh, well, then people would know the security protocols to get into there, and then clever thieves might be able to, Mission Impossible on wire ropes, drop in from the ceiling. Tom Cruise's 60-year-old ass could probably still pull it off. Maybe they could get in there and rob it. But I'll tell you, I trust Elon Musk auditing it. I trust Rand Paul getting an audit way more than I trust the assurances of my government that gold has not been touched and that gold resides in there. I mean, shit, I would trust Goldfinger from the movie Goldfinger and his hat-throwing Asian assassin way more than I would trust our government. At least I know that they have an interest in keeping it there, right? Goldfinger, he didn't even want to steal it from Fort Knox. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Goldfinger from 1976 or whatever it was. He wanted to keep the gold there, and he wanted to irradiate it so that nobody could get with it, thus making the gold that he had more valuable. There you go. Maybe he succeeded. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why nobody can go in there, because it's been irradiated by a supervillain, and we just don't know. We're just none the wiser. But holy shit. The erection I would have watching a live stream audit of Fort Knox gold, incomparable. And some people have said, yes, this reminds me of the Geraldo, who, by the way, fuck Geraldo. I don't know what a jerk off that guy is. But Geraldo Rivera did a big reveal on live TV of Capone's vault. I don't know if you guys remember this. I think it was, let's see, I was in LA. I think Rico was sleeping on my couch for a couple weeks during this. I was in a crappy apartment called the Colonial House in Venice, California. I believe that's when this happened. So it's probably 2004, right? Maybe after that, 2006, that Geraldo Rivera opened up Capone's vault, and they did this whole build-up, right? And they go in there, and they dig it out, and they're cracking it up, and Geraldo's sitting there with his stupid mustache, and they open it up, and there's nothing inside. That's what's going to happen with Fort Knox. Exact same outcome. The only question here is if they announce it, right? If they say, we're going to go into Fort Knox, we're going to go and crack this thing open, we're going to go see what crusty gold bars are in there, will the price of gold skyrocket beforehand? Now you're asking, why would that make sense that the price of gold would skyrocket beforehand? I'll tell you, because I think that we'll have our proof. Even if they agree to an audit, if you see the price of gold skyrocket in advance of this audit, then you know that the government actors behind the scenes are out there buying up a shit ton of fucking gold to try to make it look nice that the gold's in there. That's my logic. Maybe it's flawed. Maybe there's not that much gold to be bought. I can certainly see that. But I have to think there's a way for them to get that gold. I know our European brethren, I'm sure the Chinese have some. I'm sure, they'll be able to borrow, beg, and steal. But watch the price of gold. And if they announce a live audit, I'm going to go and buy a bunch of gold futures just to have them, because I can guarantee you're going to see that price of gold skyrocket as these rats try to put the cheese back into the vault. All right. So that's my thoughts on that. I'll wrap it up by talking about Saturday Night Live. But before we get to that, what's been interesting is Pete Hegseth obviously has taken over as Department of Defense Secretary. And there's been, amidst all of this censorship in the EU, which I think is partially also based in the want for control over public sentiment to push back against a potential war, right? Because just like anything else, once you have the mechanisms in place for control of free speech, you can expand that and expand that to whatever you want. And as we see with the Ukraine, with Zelensky arresting journalists and banning political parties and banning elections and everything else that he's done, these other nations that are hungry for war, and yes, I do believe that they are hungry for war. I think that this is an inevitable outcome, especially when you have strife at home, when you have varying divisiveness at home, when you have all these political problems and in debt issues that they've created through asinine leftist policies. Well, a nice world war wipes out all those debts, kind of resets things, allows the people in power to stay in power for the most part. So you've got the mechanisms for control in there. And it's very easy to say, well, you're not allowed to question the war state because that would make you a traitor, right? You're undermining the nation's security by trying to undermine our war efforts. What's interesting is that the way this could play out with Trump saying he wants to ban, and Hegseth stating, look, anything with Ukraine as far as a peace deal would mean Ukraine is not a member of NATO. We're not funding this shit anymore. And that Europe, if you want to back Ukraine, well, that's on you. That's on your dime, right? And this was stated very clearly by Hegseth, also echoed by J.D. Vance. This is on your dime. For Europe, who I think still is itching for a war with Russia, this is a long time building, well, if they want the war, then it's going to come down to them pushing Ukraine and pushing Russia to the point where now NATO would be triggered through some sort of Russian action or counteraction into one of the neighboring regions. So then you go, okay, Article 5. Are we going to respect Article 5 and be drawn into this battle? And what's interesting is that Article 5 is not something that we have to obey. And in fact, I could see us pulling out of NATO completely over this. And frankly, I have a lot of hope that Pete Hegseth, who has basically floated the same concept, would just say, no, fuck off. We're not getting into World War III over this. We're not going to respect Article 5 because you guys have pushed Russia and continued to pressure this situation. Even after we said we want peace in Ukraine, we want to back out of this, and we have no interest in funding additional, interactions in this proxy war that's going on between two massive nations. And, I was reading, there's a great blog, Armstrong Economics, and he was saying the same thing. And I've said this before as well. When it comes to these great powers, we're getting into a 1984 type scenario where scenario where you have the two mega blocks, right? It's going to be China, it's going to be Russia, and then TBD, I don't know, Iran. And then you have the NATO nations. And these two, megaliths that are going to come together. And if Russia were to go into war with NATO, I think it's almost a default that China is going to back Russia. And now we've got a legitimate world war in our hands. The United States could pretty much end that immediately by saying, we're not going to respect Article 5. We're not going to back this bullshit. We're not getting into a war with these other two superpowers. Good luck, all of you little European nations that spend, 2% of what you're supposed to on defense. Go ahead. You go up against these two. See how that fares. And I do like that Trump's gone out of his way to say he wants a drawdown in military budgets across the board with China and Russia and the U.S. I mean, it's an amazing thing, especially for a guy, Donald Trump in his last go-round. And let's not forget that Michael, the cunt walrus, Bolton was out there saying, well, you've got to support the military. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to go, all the worst foreign policy positions you could possibly hold. Or John Bolton, not Michael Bolton. That would be funny though, if Trump brought in Michael Bolton. John Bolton. It's so hard. When you ever talk about a Bolton, it's hard not to default to Michael Bolton. He's ruined all of the Boltons for us. So John Bolton. But, you got John Bolton pushing him this way. And he approved the largest military budget in history, which I think at the time was like $980 billion. And now you've got Trump taking a very different tack, saying we need to draw it down. We need to reduce it heavily, which is interesting. I mean, it's as much as I want to see what holds up and what is sacrificed on the altar of politics, I have a lot of hope for Donald Trump. And I think that he's changed quite a bit insofar as who he's got around him, who he's listening to, his outlook on the presidency, his outlook on what the nation needs to be safe and solvent. I mean, the focus on debt with Doge is amazing, and military budget is a massive part of that budget, guys. Let's not forget, it was over $1 trillion. I believe it was $1.3 trillion last year. And we already know that the Pentagon has failed 4 consecutive fucking audits because they don't oversee shit. They don't audit anything. They just throw money around to various nations, to various causes, to sides battling each other, paying $700 for a hammer and $60 per bullet. It's an interesting evolution. And I'm praying it is going to keep us out of World War III, because that seems to be the default for these people. When they're defaulting on debt, your default is war. All right, let's wrap it up with something else. We'll talk about SNL. So this SNL, I'm not going to play this skit, but I didn't watch any of this Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary. I don't watch SNL anymore. I haven't for years. It's not funny. Lorne Michaels has zero eye for talent. Hasn't for the last 20 years, I would say at least. I mean, Tina Fey, I loved. I didn't really think Tina Fey was amazing when she was head writer on SNL, but she went on to write one of the funniest shows I've ever seen, which is 30 Rock. So I know she had the talent, and clearly that talent was watered down and ruined by people like Lorne Michaels and the rest of the writing staff. But Lorne Michaels is going to get a comeuppance. I don't mean as far as somebody going and beating him on the street. I mean that similar to everything in the entertainment industry, that comeuppance is in a massive drop in revenue, in ratings. And look, 50th anniversary, they're saying got 15 million viewers. Do I believe that? No, I don't. I think that that's probably going to include a lot of chicanery as far as counting streaming numbers and people that DVR'd it and watch later and predictive and all this other shit. But SNL is still a brand that holds weight because it's been around for so long, right? Similar to The Simpsons, which is unwatchable dreck, but it holds a lot of weight. It used to be good at one point in time. But you're seeing with the entertainment industry, you have these legacy properties that Marvel has and Star Wars and, and even the legacy Disney properties like Snow White, they're coming out and they've ruined the brand and they've misread the room and they've misread the culture after pushing such unbelievable leftism, progressive dog shit and ignoring the part of the country that actually watches more TV and spends more money on entertainment, which is going to be your, middle of the country, your people that are family oriented, that, that are stuck home with the kids, that are going to go to see movies with their children and their family members. These are the people that are your base. And they abandon them to try to preach all the time. Well, you're seeing that come home to roost. You're seeing that with Disney firing, I'll talk about this before, firing all their Marvel producers from the goddamn run of dog shit they made that nobody wanted to watch. You're seeing Disney Plus crater. You're seeing entertainment studios across the board and even through to gaming just losing hundreds of millions of dollars on woke games that nobody wants to play. And the same thing with woke movies. And frankly, I don't know if you people have seen Emilia Perez. I'm not going to watch the movie. I've seen clips of it that look so horrendously idiotic and insulting. I mean, there's one where they're singing about vaginoplasty and it's a badly written song and it's badly acted and it's just idiotic drivel. And yet this is nominated for 13 Academy Awards and won the Golden Globes. They're digging their own graves. They still haven't caught up. And I know this surely was in the pipeline. And look, most of the people voting for the Academy are still these same assholes who don't get it. But they are changing course. They're hiring different people. They're trying to make different shows. On the first episode podcast, which you all should watch and check out. None of you do because I can see the download, so eat my ass. But you should check it out. We just reviewed Shifting Gears. Now, this is a show with... oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. I blanked on his name last time too. The guy from Tool Time, Tim Allen. They made a show and it's clearly written for, conservative audiences, but they've got the liberal in there. And this follows another show, Going Dutch, which had Dennis Leary in it. That was also terrible, by the way. Both of these shows are terrible because the writers they're hiring are still hacks. They're, I don't know, leftists trying to write for conservatives, or they're just old, out of touch people that maybe they had a hit series in the past and they know that they can't hire new woke left shitty writers that are young because these people don't know how to write and they don't know how to write comedy that's actually funny instead of just ideologically based. But they're making these shows. Going Dutch stars Dennis Leary as a very conservative military officer faced with his very liberal officer daughter who's at this, stupid Dutch pancake making cheese factory military base. Shifting Gears has Kat Dennings as the hyper liberal coming back and has to live with her dad, who's an old school curmudgeon conservative. They're trying to make the change because they have to, because the market is forcing them into making the change because people don't want this shit anymore. SNL and Lorne Michaels, because Lorne Michaels has complete control, well, he doesn't get it yet. He might never get it. In truth, Lorne Michaels may have to die or be forced out before Saturday Night Live becomes redeemable, but it will happen. That property is too valuable. The legacy name is too valuable for them to let it die, and that is what is clearly happening. this SNL skit that everybody's talking about, Tom Hanks. I don't blame Tom Hanks. I can blame Tom Hanks for a lot of other things, including what his bullshit over COVID and his potential Epstein connections. But Tom Hanks, I don't blame for being in a skit trying to make fun of a Donald Trump supporter. But the writing in this is so lazy. Having a Donald Trump supporter refusing to shake a black man's hand is lazy, stupid, unfunny writing, because and I guess the overarching concept of this skit was that these black men in this Black Jeopardy sketch had actually agreed with a Donald Trump conservative because they should, frankly, and they do, frankly. It's the reason Donald Trump got more votes from the black population than any other Republican president in history, and why so many black people are abandoning the Democratic Party, because they see the lies, they see how they're being taken advantage of, and they see that they don't have a trust for government, nor should they. It always boggles my mind when black people have a trust of government. You're the biggest population that have the biggest mistrust of government ever. I mean, give me a break. Why would you want to support government when it's done so many terrible things against you? But I digress. The overarching concept of this skit could be funny, but then they go and have to shove in this shit because they hate Trump and they hate his supporters and they hate everybody that voted for him. So they got to make this guy a racist who won't shake a black man's hand. They just don't get it. And they're going to be put in the bin of irrelevancy where SNL basically already lives. And I couldn't tell you a single name of the person on that show anymore, except for that annoying ass gay Asian guy who's not funny and is just fucking obnoxious that they're trying to force on us. I couldn't tell you a single other person's name on that show. I don't think most people can. And Lorne, wake the fuck up, buddy, because I still have SNL. I still hold it in a place in my heart. At one point, I first got into writing. I wanted to write for SNL. That was like my dream job. I read the books on it. I, watched all the docs. I was a huge fan of it growing up. And yes, it's still, it's lefty. Still, it's always been lefty, but they had a way of actually lampooning both sides, and it was legitimately funny. Whereas now it's just predictable shit, lazy writing, bad writers, no eye for talent. So SNL, happy 50th. Lauren, call it a day, buddy. Again, call it a day. All right, guys, that's going to be it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Again, you can support us on Patreon. Follow me at Brian McWilliams. Follow the Lions of Liberty. And we've got some very exciting things coming up, guys, in the next couple months we're going to announce. So, get it on the ground floor. That's what I'm telling you. The ground floor, as I say, doing this 10 years. All right, that's it. From me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty and from Mean Age Daydream. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head. I haven't replaced the song in the outro. Yeah, I'll just leave it. All right, goodbye.